Well, it's a great pleasure to be here. I did 20 years in the military. I was the senior legal advisor to all the Green Berets. I know all kids today want to be Navy SEALs, but when I was growing up, everybody wanted to be a Green Beret. Allen Green Berets, John Wayne, stuff like that. Retired in 2000 and became a law professor at St. Mary's University School of Law in San Antonio. We are the best law school in San Antonio. Of course, we're the only law school in San Antonio. And so when 9/11 occurred, I went to the dean and said, you know, there's going to be a lot of new legal issues popping up in this war on terror stuff. Would you allow me to create a center to study these things? The dean said yes. And so I founded the Center for Terrorism Law. We've been in operation now for 10 years. We actually got up on our feet in 2003. We had Senator John Cornyn came and cut the ribbon for our center. And then when we built our facility, we have a $700,000 facility at the law school. We had Mike McCall come and inaugurate that. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary last year. We had Governor Rick Perry come down and celebrate that with us. So we're a very high-profile center. We work all around the world, and I guess I am spending a few minutes talking about our center before we talk about the topic du jour, which is radical Islamic extremism. The center, what have we done the last 10 years? I've done over 4,000 media interviews from every outlet you can think of. Media is extremely biased, and I've done about 700 speeches all around the world, from Cairo to Timbuktu to Paris, and some of them are real nice places. But I always enjoy Tea Party, folks, because we're preaching to the choir. But I do like to, I had a speech I did about 2 years ago. I debated the president of the ACLU, which is a New York law professor by the name of Susan Herman, and I debated her in Boston. That's deep behind enemy lines. I'm originally from Alabama, so which is the heart of Dixie. We have that on our tag. So, you know, the same old thing. Gitmo's evil, drone strikes are illegal, and the sky is falling, and we're shredding the Constitution, the Patriot Act, all that stuff. Anyway, I intellectually dismantled her in front of this audience, and the audience was about 3 times your size, and they were every nut job from local ACLU units from 4 states around came out. And I'm not a holy roller, but those people were levitating out of their chairs. Because intellectually, the left has no basis to stand on anything, so they get very emotional. And the problem, of course, when you engage in this terrorism stuff, you're doing 2 things that your mama tells you to never do in polite company. You're talking about religion and politics. Because if you're for Guantanamo Bay, you're the devil. I'm the only law professor in the United States of America that works with the government pro bono. You lawyers know what that means. No money. They pay my airfare. But I'm the only law professor that works for the government in Guantanamo Bay. I've talked to the prosecutor, who's a 1-star general. In fact, I knew him when I was in the JAG Corps. I'm on slate to testify at Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's trial. I've testified before the U.S. Senate that waterboarding is not torture. The Senate, as you know, was taken over by the Democrat Party in 2006. And one of the first things they did, they had a hearing called "What Went Wrong with the Bush Administration? Why Did They Torture People?" Now that's really a fair and balanced fact-finding mission by your U.S. Senate, isn't it? They had Dick Durbin, Dianne Feinstein, these other individuals. They invited 4 law professors to come tell them about how, you know, we torture people and how bad we are. So they had 3 law professors, and the Republicans asked me to come. And you can go to our website and see my comments, but basically, waterboarding as we practiced it is a joke, an absolute joke. I don't think we have time to go into that tonight, but it's a joke. We had to waterboard Khalid Sheikh Mohammed 182 times. The waterboarding session lasted about 10 seconds. They put a few drops of water down the poor little fellow's, epiglottis, and he choked a little bit. Big deal. You get that in the water ride at Fiesta, Texas. Not a big deal. And yet the Torture Convention says that if you do torture, you must prosecute. So after I intellectually showed them that our technique did not constitute severe pain and suffering, I told these senators that I know you're violating the Torture Convention. They looked at me. Because Article 7 says you must prosecute. And that means that, when I invited, I said, look, I'll take you across the street to the district court. I'll fill out the charge sheet for you. We need to prosecute President Bush, the Department of Justice that authorized it, the individuals that did it, and why aren't you prosecuting? Because they want to use it as a political piñata, obviously. But the disinformation campaign from the far left is so severe that it almost makes you bilious. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just because you guys are you know, you're with it. You know what's going on. So let me just ask you, I'm going to throw this question out because we're giving away door prizes and I think that's a good idea. Okay, you don't get Mo's the evil place, right? That's what the Democrats are telling us. Dick Durbin said it's a Nazi concentration camp. Was anybody ever waterboarded at Guantanamo Bay? No, never happened. Never happened. Factually, no one was ever waterboarded at Guantanamo Bay. Did the military ever waterboard any detainees? We've taken thousands of detainees since 9/11. Did the military ever waterboard a single one of them? No. No. Okay, here's the door prize. How many people of the thousands of detainees that we've taken in this war on terror, how many actually were waterboarded? Three. Okay, who's the first one that said three? I think it was back here. I've got a tumbler up here for you. Now you guys are obviously, most audiences have no idea. They assume that every day, oh, it's Tuesday, let's go out and dunk Ahmed, you know, in a waterboarding technique in Guantanamo Bay. Only 3 people. Now, where were they waterboarded? And who did it? It was the CIA, obviously. Where were they waterboarded? Anybody know where? Europe. Oh, but you didn't hear that from me. So it's much ado about nothing. Is there another facility besides Guantanamo Bay that we operate to keep detainees in? Yes. The Obama administration has actually taken more detainees than President Bush. And he puts them in the nice Obama facility, which is in Bagram Air Force Base. Your tax dollars have built a multi-million-dollar facility. And if he puts you in Bagram, you don't get a federal judge to review your status. If you go to Gitmo, you do get a federal judge to review your status and make sure you got the right guy. Drone killings. How many people has President Obama killed with drones? Does anybody know what the number?
3,000.
It's between 2,000 and 3,000. Yeah, that's a lot of people. President Bush about 12. And yet, of course, the media is very, they hyperventilate anytime a conservative or a quasi-conservative does anything, because in my opinion, President Bush was not a conservative, he was a quasi-conservative. But that's another story. Anyway, our center also, we represent soldiers wrongfully accused of war crimes. My first case, I represented 2 Green Beret soldiers in Afghanistan. They were out in Afghanistan, and they wanted to bring a medical convoy into the village to help out the villagers. And so the A-team arranged to have this convoy come in. Well, one of the villagers came to Captain Staffel and said, the Taliban has infiltrated the village, and when the convoy comes in, they're going to do a suicide attack and kill as many medical personnel as they can. And the leader of this attack is at hut number 13. So Captain Staffel got Master Sergeant Anderson. They got up on a little hill above hut number 13. They sent the interpreter into the, to the hut, knock on the door, bad guy comes out, they blow his brains out. 1 shot, 1 kill with a sniper shot. Good kill. In the law of war, that's how you want to kill people, is when they're not looking. The law of war says you may kill the enemy, as long as they don't put their hands up and surrender, it's a good kill. The Taliban got a hold of the AP reporter, and they said the Green Berets had murdered our village elder. Now, not all liars are murderers, but all murderers are liars. You can quote me on that. For example, we all lie. I mean, nobody's perfect, but most individuals don't make lying a pattern of life. And of course, if you can murder, you can lie, right? And so the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda, I mean, of course they lie. In fact, part of the Quran tells them to lie to the infidel to advance their religious beliefs. And as O.J. Simpson looks for the real killers, I guess he's got a better chance now because he's in prison. Remember, he was looking for the real killers on the golf courses in Florida. And if O.J. didn't kill those people, there's not a dog in Georgia. Of course he murdered them. But again, so not all liars are murderers, but all murderers are liars. And so the Taliban got a hold of this AP reporter. They said the Green Berets have killed our village elder. A lie. The reporter didn't check it out because that's what sells newspapers. Green Beret, and it doesn't matter what the rest of it says. Or Navy SEAL, it doesn't matter what the rest of it says. So they published that in the paper. A general back here in the United States read the paper, and he ordered his subordinate general to prefer murder charges against these 2 heroes. Charge them with murder, just based on the story in the newspaper. The subordinate general said, no, I'm not going to do that. These guys are heroes. They killed the enemy. Here's the documentation from the CID. It's a good kill. So the general preferred murder charges himself. He went to his clerk and said, type up the murder charges. They handcuffed this captain, master sergeant, brought him back to Fort Bragg, and charged him with murder. I heard about the case, of course, and represented them pro bono without charging them a penny. I explained to the court-martial why it was a good kill. Under the law of war, and I went through the fact that the president believes we're at war, the Congress believes we're at war because they authorized the use of force. And the Supreme Court, in all their decisions, have always said this is a real war. In every single Supreme Court decision, 2004, 2006, and 2008 are the three major groupings. They've said, yes, this is a real war. We're just going to add a few protections to the detainees. Anyway, all charges were dropped against both of these people, and 18 other individuals that this general had charged with murder in Iraq and Afghanistan, he also decided to drop those murder charges as well, so they all were sprung. Why would this general do that? Of course, politics. You may or may not know this, but in the military, if you're promoted from a colonel to a 1-star, a 1-star to 2-star, 2-star to 3-star, a board will meet and recommend you for promotion, but you don't get to get promoted until the Senate approves it. Now in 2006, when Harry Reid and those individuals, I know we have children in the room, took over the Senate, this general heard all the propaganda. You know, at that time, we're killing the enemy, we're slaughtering, we're raping, we're pillaging. And so this general thought, aha, if I'm going to get promoted, I've got to tell these Democrats that I'm prosecuting our own soldiers and I'm prosecuting the enemy. That's why he did it, to get promoted. And of course, he was promoted to 3-star because he sang their song. We have not had a red-blooded American general that believes in killing the enemy and military victory since 2006. Because if you don't sing their song, the Democrat Senate will not recommend you for promotion. That's why we had the don't ask, don't tell. Nobody stood up and said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard of, to get rid of don't ask, don't tell. Why? They all want to get promoted. And Bergdahl, this traitor, he's not been court-martialed. The Obama administration sent him to a 2-star general in San Antonio to investigate the case. The fix is in. If I have time, I'll tell you what the real story behind that individual is, and the trade that we had for 5 4-star Taliban generals out of Guantanamo Bay, and we got one traitor that's not even being court-martialed. People were killed trying to find him. And the propaganda, of course, is, oh, we don't leave anybody behind. No, he left us behind. Of course we don't leave people behind. He left us behind. And we don't even get the satisfaction of going to a court-martial to hold him accountable for what he did, because the narrative is he served his country with honor and distinction. I made the swap. The narrative can't be that the guy's a yellow-bellied traitor and I made a swap of 5 Taliban leaders for a yellow-bellied traitor. So therefore the fix is in. It's Orwellian, from Benghazi to every other issue. I wish I had 8 hours to tell you all the inside stories. But one good thing about the Obama administration, they made me look like a genius. They absolutely do. I love it. I'm going to be sad when they're gone. But of course, if Hillary gets elected, it'll be the same old same old. Let me explain how that happens. The first attack on the homeland since 9/11 was Hassan, right here in Texas. There have been 5 major attempts by radical Islamic extremists to kill us in large numbers here in Texas. 5 of them. You're probably familiar with Hassan. He jumped up on a table, murdered 13 people, screamed out, Allah Akbar. He used to wear white robes around like Batman costumes, handing out cards saying, I'm a warrior for Allah, Allah, and I want to behead people. You know, what was your first clue that this guy was radical Islamic extremist? But the Obama administration said, no, it can't happen on my watch, therefore it's workplace violence. And of course, finally, Hassan in his trial said, yeah, I did it in the name of Islam. I wish I could kill more of y'all. In any event, he did break through and he killed 13 people. He was motivated, of course, by radical Islamic extremism. And we're going to talk about those types of terrorism in a few moments. But, you know, Texas has it right here. Okay, so we have a crisis in leadership. So when Hassan occurred, I was listening like everybody else, who did it, what happened. The administration, through the FBI, and I teach at the FBI Academy 4 times a year. Anyway, the FBI put out a notice and they said this is not a terrorist attack. And of course the FBI doesn't put out a news media release unless Obama approves it. I got on TV and said it is a terrorist attack and it's radical Islam. They said, boy, you must really have some secret connections. How did you know that so quickly? I just smiled. I just assumed the opposite. And I've never been wrong. In New York, Zazi, who was a Muslim extremist, tried to blow up a car in Times Square. The Obama administration put out a memo that we're looking for a white man in a sweater. As soon as I heard that, I said, no, I got on TV, it's radical Islamic extremists. I was right again. Benghazi. I have an I Love Me wall at our center where I have all these things. I've been on TV and, you know, all these things. One of my favorites is from the San Antonio Express News. I got the front page. I have the first article, first line, first name, first everything. It says, terrorism expert says Benghazi is deliberate attack, not video. And that was the day after Benghazi. How did I know that? I just assumed the opposite. That's all I have to do. Boston. I was on the Glenn Beck show, Radical Islam. How do you know that? Well, the administration had tapes early on. They weren't saying a thing, which means they knew who it was. So, now you have my secret. But most people think I'm so well connected, I was like, wow, you've got it going on. I just assume the opposite. I've never been wrong. They're so predictable, so sophomoric, so pedestrian, it's almost silly. It's absolute silliness. Okay, so terrorism. Let's talk about terrorism. Terrorism is a lousy word because it's a tactic. You can't make war on a tactic. President Bush came up with the term war on terror. It's sexy, but it doesn't describe anything. I want to know who's doing the terror, because terrorism is a tactic. The Chinese proverb says you kill one and frighten 10,000. That's the goal of the terrorists, but it's a tactic. We have terrorists come from in different stripes. I'm going to roll over here real quick. Set this down. Okay, we have four major categories of people that engage in terrorism in this country. The reason I brought this book is I want to use it as show and tell. Okay, the first category would be just the nut job, the criminal. Criminals engage in terrorism. They go postal because a lot of it happens in post offices. We had one at Fort Hood recently that the military didn't let him go see Mama, so he started killing people. And so they're just criminals. They're arrogant criminals. What causes crime? Criminals. Criminals cause crime. You're a rotten kid, you're a rotten teenager, you're a rotten adult. The liberals say, well, if we just improve the environment, we'll have less crime. Really? You ever hear of the Kennedy family? They are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and you name the crime, that clan has done it. They've done murder, rape, robbery, larceny, you name it, they've done it all. In fact, when the Kennedys in that place up there, where is it, in New Hampshire, where somewhere up north. Yeah, when they have their Kennedy family get-togethers, they got to call out the National Guard for the extra DWIs that are going to occur that weekend. No, improved environment does not equate with reduction of crime. Criminals cause crime. And what are criminals? They are hypersensitive about themselves and insensitive about others. That's the definition of arrogance. They're arrogant SOBs. Hypersensitive about yourself and insensitive about others. If you're on your second marriage, it's your first spouse. And so that's what they are. They don't care about anybody else. They just care about themselves. Hypersensitive. Okay, so that's one category of people that use terror. Another category, we have right-wing extremists. And liberals always, their eyes get real big when they saw right-wing extremists. When Janet Napolitano took over as the Department of Homeland Security chieftain, the first memo she put out, she said, oh, we don't need to worry about radicalism. The people, what we really need to watch is right-wing extremism. And I've got this in my book. The reason I'm holding this is the 7th edition of my book, published in 2014. It's got all the information in here that you would need to intellectually destroy the far left. With all the nonsense they put out, it's all countered here point by point by point. So her memo is one of those things in there. We got to watch right-wing extreme. Remember that one? Right-wing extreme. Then she listed the things that law enforcement should look for. One, they want to look for anybody that's a returning veteran. Because, Timothy McVeigh was a veteran, so that's me. Two, we want to look for anyone that thinks that we're doing a lousy job securing the southern border. Okay, that's me. We secure the southern border. It's like having a screen door in a submarine. That's about how secure it is. And then three, you can't make this up. Anybody that believes in limited government, we need to watch them. Now, Janet, baby, limited government. That's called the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. We were founded as a limited government. Who are these people? Anyway, I turned myself in. I literally emailed him and said, if that's your definition of a right-wing extremist, that's me. And here's where I live. And bring help because I got a lot of guns. You may have already guessed it, but I am the most conservative law professor in these United States of America. And I'm proud of it because I had to work for a living. Most law professors have never been out in the real world. I think being 20 years in the military, my dad 30 years, we fought in every single war that this country's had, including the war between the states, and we fought in the grave. But we've been in all the wars. And it's in the blood, kind of, I suppose. But in any event, I turned myself in. My liberal acquaintances, they always go, well, Attica, why do you have those guns? You don't need them for hunting. And I always say, I don't keep them for hunting. Then they get real excited, because that's the only reason they think you should have a gun. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the local constabulary will not be there when you need them. And a riot-control shotgun makes a very distinctive noise at 3 in the morning when you change it around. If that doesn't drive them out, get down low. And because they're going to be looking here, you get down low and cut them in half. And then, of course, go through the wallet and pull out whatever cash they've got, because you're going to have to spackle the walls, clean up the blood when you call 911. And that's why I keep guns, the number one reason. And then number two, to protect my community, my state, and then the nation. Our founders realized that big government makes little people. And they realized that the government can turn sour. It can turn into a tyranny. And that's why they put in the Second Amendment. You know, that's the love letter we wrote to the British. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary to break these bonds. And that's a nice letter, but if you don't have powder to back it up, you're not going anywhere. And so that's why I keep guns. I don't advocate secession, but I certainly want to threaten it every once in a while. In fact, a bumper sticker on my truck at the law school says secede. The one that Perry had used to have with the Texas thing on it. And people say, well, the Constitution, that's unconstitutional. First of all, it doesn't come from the Constitution. That right comes from God. When we had our Declaration of Independence, there was no Constitution. We said these are God-given rights that our Creator gave us to come together and to come apart. So if that day ever comes, you know, that's why I keep my guns. I don't know why you keep yours. That's exactly why I keep it. I'll shoot a deer. I'm a good shot. And I know how to skin it. I know how to kill chickens, all that stuff. But that's why I keep my guns. And so right-wing extremists are out there. What do right-wing extremists really get very buzzed about? Big government. They have an inordinate fear of big government. It goes beyond. I think a fear of big government is very healthy, but these folks go off the deep end. They see blue berets everywhere. The black helicopters are landing. And every time Obama does something, they send out emails and say, did you hear he's setting up a concentration camp in Central Texas, and they just bought up X amount of cases as ammo. I hate these guys because I can't even buy 223 rounds anymore. Everybody buys them all every time these emails goes around. And it's just nut jobs and underwear sitting on the internet. Price of guns are skyrocketing. You know, they're not that competent, folks. They couldn't put together something like that if they wanted to. The Obama administration is one of the most incompetent regimes we've ever seen. They just couldn't do it if they wanted to. I'm sure they'd like to, maybe. They can't. They're not that competent. And so when they do use violence like McVeigh was not a Christian. He was an agnostic. So when they say, well, he was a right-wing Christian, no, he wasn't. He was agnostic. And they target symbols of federal authority. We had a guy crash his plane into the IRS building in Austin, remember a few years back? And then we have people target the FBI, CIA, that's what they do. Then we have left-wing extremists. What's the problem with left-wing extremists? Well, they hate capitalism. They want to redistribute the wealth. They do not realize that God is a capitalist. How do we know God's a capitalist? Well, if you're a conservative, you are a strict constructionist. You're a strict constructionist. That's what it means when they say, what does it mean to be a conservative? You're a strict constructionist. For example, my liberal colleagues in the law profession, they all believe the death penalty is unconstitutional. And they wet their drawers every time somebody dies. Okay, they say, well, it's cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, well, is it? Clarence Thomas and I, who is my favorite Supreme Court justice, we would say, okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Let's go back to the founders. If we could put the founders in a room, we would ask them, is the death penalty cruel and unusual punishment? They would say what all good Texans say, get a rope. Of course you idiots, not cruel and unusual punishment. Therefore, if you're a conservative, you're stricken. I want to know what the founders thought. They're the geniuses that put this thing together. Liberals think, well, they're just evil, white males. Some of them own slaves, and they're way out of times. Liberals want to shape people. They want to shape the Constitution to fit the degenerate ideas of the society we live in. So therefore, the Constitution will change to fit the degeneracy of the society. Conservatives, we want to mold people into the Constitution. That's the difference. We view the Constitution as the Holy Grail. They view it as a roadblock to their idea of utopian socialism. They hate it. And of course, they can interpret those words any way they want to interpret the words. And so the left-wing extremists, they don't understand that God's a capitalist. Thou shalt not steal recognizes the private ownership of property. And the 10th Commandment says, you shall not lust after your neighbor's wife and goat and dogs and all those things. It's theirs. And Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they weren't poor dirt farmers or cattle. They were multi-millionaires. So God's a capitalist. Thessalonians gives you the view. If you don't work, you don't eat. That's what Paul was saying. Some of the loafers laying around, well, you're a Christian, you must feed me. Get a damn job. That's the divine viewpoint. In fact, I've got a lot of medals in the military. I mean, when I retired, I took my Class A uniform and put it off one dummy onto another. It's got all these, I got a lot of them. And so I used to, when I was in the Pentagon, I used to pump gas. You'd have these bums coming up, And, oh man, can you help me out? I said, buddy, I help you out every day of your life. I'm giving you a free country to live in, get a damn job. Only my response. Well, that's very unchristian. No, it's not at all. Very Christian. It's called tough love. So, and now the liberals say, what about that passage in Acts where they pooled all their resources? Well, that's because if you were a Christian in Jerusalem, they would excommunicate you as a Jew from the synagogue, from the temple. No one would buy from your business, and no one would sell you anything. The only collection that was ever taken up was taken up by Paul for the Jews, the Christians in Jerusalem. There was no collection for the church in Ephesus, or Lystra, or Philippi, or Corinth. There's no collection for those knuckleheads. Get a job. It was only for the people in Jerusalem because of the special circumstances. So bam, that's how you could refute that argument, because they always say, oh, well, they'd share everything. No, they didn't. It's a one-time exception to the rule. Okay, so liberals, when they go off, what do they target symbols of capitalism? The Hummer plot, or the or the lumber yard, or the animal research facility, because animals and people are the same. Really? I eat animals, but I don't eat people. I was talking to some very intelligent woman here this evening, and she said, the root of the problem is that, the third category, I'll talk about this. So the third category is radical Islam. Now, the government would have you believe, now, radical Islam is, again, they're motivated by religion. So in the back of this book, I catalog in federal court, because the FBI has primary authority to investigate all terrorism cases. The fellow that chopped off that lady's head in Oklahoma, the FBI was all over the place because they investigate terrorism cases. The Department of Justice is supposed to prosecute all terrorism cases. But of course, under Obama, he punted Hassan to the military because he didn't want to try it in federal court. He punted the case in Arkansas in 2009. We had Mr. Muhammad killed a recruiter and wounded another. The feds didn't try that case. They just said, well, that's more workplace violence. The state tried it. And this Nolan fellow, whose name is Ibrahim, who's converted to Islam, they're not going to prosecute in a federal court. The state is. Now, in the back of this book, I've got case after case after, I got a chart here. Case after case after case, hundreds of cases of the cases of the federal court cases of terrorist cases that have been prosecuted since 9/11. 95% of them are right-wing, left-wing, or radical Islam. Radical Islam, 95%. There's a Pew study in the book that I quote that says that Muslim males between the ages of 18 and 27, a quarter of them believe that it's justified to murder in the name of Islam. That's a lot of people. Now, if you draw a circle, the folks that are actually going to go out and kill tomorrow would be in the middle of the circle. And then you get people that support, and the further out you go, they're less committed to the cause. Right now, the jihadists in our country are very energized. They're excited like I've never seen them before. Why are they so energized? Because ISIS, I don't know why the president still calls them ISIL. That's like the third term back. They are an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Where do they come from? Well, we had Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and the Al-Qaeda leadership said Iraq was going to be the centerpiece battle. And of course, President Bush finally got it right because we had that knuckleheaded idea from the Secretary of State, Colin Powell. If you break it, you own it. Remember that? No, you don't. If you break it, it's broken. Why in the hell do we have to own anything? If you attack us, we crush you and leave. With a little note that says, mess with us again, we'll be back in 5 years. But somehow liberals think if we have this war, we'll never have another war. Of course you'll have another war. As the Lord Christ said, there's going to be wars and rumors of wars until I come back. He ain't back. So you better have a vibrant military, because what keeps these people in their cages is the application of violence or the threat of violence. The application of violence or the threat of violence, called deterrence. The Obama administration is giving us a McDonald's butter knife to rattle. I want to have a big cavalry saber. When I rattle it, I want them to pay attention, because nobody's afraid of a butter knife. We couldn't do anything against ISIS if we wanted to. We don't have the troops anymore. And the morale in our military is so low, it's unbelievable. Think about it. You're in Afghanistan. The Obama surge cost us 1,000 casualties, dead and wounded. And the Taliban's stronger after the surge than before the surge. He has no idea what he's doing. In fact, a news reporter asked Obama when he first took office, how do you define victory in Afghanistan? Quote, I'm not comfortable with that word. What? You're going to go to war and you can't define what victory is? Well, I wish I could say you're fired, but that didn't happen. Unfortunately, we have a lot of dead weight in this country that doesn't get it. They don't get it. They're apathetic, they're ignorant, they're not motivated. Well, the good thing about Obama is the formation of the Tea Party. Because before, under the Bush administration, we were being slowly cooked like a frog in water. Slow heat, slow heat. When Obama came, the smart people said they jumped out of the pot. And so we're out of the pot now. Okay, so I'll give some more comments on that later, but let's talk about radical Islam, because if you're going to defeat the enemy, you've got to know how they think. Otherwise, you haven't got a chance. I've been to madrasas, I've been all over the Middle East, including India, which has a lot of Muslims in India, believe it or not. A lot of madrasas. In Guantanamo Bay, we have the worst of the worst right now, down there right now. In the old days, you'd ask people, you know, why are you here? Oh, you got the wrong guy. I'm just an innocent turned farmer. Today, they will say, I'm going to kill you. Let me out of here. And that's very frustrating for a lawyer because we like to loosen our ties. You know, what do y'all want? You want some land? You want some money? What do you want? We want to kill you. That's their negotiating position. They don't think like you think. And so ISIS is, as I said, they're above the ground. They've conquered a huge chunk of Iraq, a huge chunk of Syria, and they're on the expansion. And then the jihadists see in them what they saw in the 7th century. Because Islam started with blood and fire and sword. That's historical fact. Whether people like it or not, you can say, oh, Islam's a religion of peace. Well, it didn't start out as a religion of peace, did it? If you know anything about history, it was military conquest. We stopped him at the Battle of Tours in France. Charles Martel and the Teutonic Knights stopped him. We stopped him in Vienna. But how did we stop them? Killing them is how we stopped them. Military victory. There is no substitute for military victory, and yet we haven't had a military victory in a very, very long time in this country. We instead pour out the blood of our soldiers like water on the sand for political expediency. Afghanistan. In Iraq, as I said, we had Al-Qaeda in Iraq. President Bush finally got it right. We did the surge. We killed, for example, in Fallujah, 7,000 the old-fashioned way, just going in door to door and killing them. I had a friend of mine, Lieutenant of the Marine Corps, has some great stories. And that caused the Sunni awakening. An ass whipping will always wake you up. And I don't see any kids, I can use it like that. I like my military language. I have, oh my golly, I'm sorry, I apologize. I do have my professor language, so I'll stick with my professor language. Must have snuck in. Okay, but it will always wake you up. On the gluteus maximus. So, and we had stability in Iraq. So we're in the 4th quarter of the football game, we're 2 touchdowns ahead. Obama comes into office, he pulls us off the field. Let's just see what happens. Of course it's going to fall apart. They weren't quite ready. So 4,000 dead for nothing. And now, of course, the little military operation that Obama's doing right now, which will do nothing, makes you feel good. In fact, we don't even have a name for the operation. The military, we name our operation. I heard one good name that it's going to be, dude, that's my tank. Or that's my Humvee. That'd be a good name for it. Because that's what they're driving around. The Iraqis just threw down everything and ran. And so it's not going to stop anything. But I'm not for going over there and putting all the boots on the ground because as soon as we destroy them, what would happen? They'll come back. They'll come back. As a nationalist, and if you're a conservative, you're also a nationalist. What's in the best interest of our country? Well, obviously they beheaded 2 Americans. So the president should have got on TV and said, look, they beheaded 2 Americans and, oh, it's that time. We just killed 10,000 of them. We had our airstrikes go over there, and that's retaliation for what they did, and that's it. We had a very clear mission. We sent a very clear signal. We had victory, and that's why we did it. Right now, we're headed for defeat again. Because the world's going to say, well, you didn't stop them. Kobani's fallen. Baghdad's on the outskirts. You haven't stopped them. So now we set ourselves up for defeat again. Afghanistan, defeat. Iraq, defeat. They couldn't know what military victory looked like if it's, you know, stood in front of them. How do I know that? Well, God gave us military victory on a silver platter in Afghanistan. When the president ordered the killing of Osama bin Laden, a brilliant tactical victory because that took the wind out of these people. Osama bin Laden was like a mythic figure to radical Islam. When we killed him, Obama should have said, we're leaving Afghanistan next week. We win, you lose. Because why else were we there? But to kill him. You know how many Al-Qaeda fighters are in Afghanistan according to the CIA? How many are actually there? Anybody know? Another door prize. Lots of Taliban. Well, the president calls them Taliban. There's only 100. That's it. They're not there. They're all over North Africa when he bombed Gaddafi and opened up those prisons. Now the Islamists are out heavily armed all over North Africa. Real smart. Oh, but Gaddafi's a bad guy. They're all bad guys. They're all bad guys over there. At least he was in his cage. Now it's worse. It's absolutely worse. And so we're dealing with a problem right now of jihad. There are hundreds of thousands of people that believe in this thing called jihad. Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. I'm not trying to proselytize anybody, but if you're going to understand things, you've got to put on the thinking cap. Now, let's just talk about thinking for a second. Nobody in this room has ever had an original thought. Nobody. You tell me your thoughts, I'll tell you where you got them. As King Solomon said in the book of Ecclesiastes, there is nothing new under the sun. That was written 3,000 years ago. There's nothing new under the sun. Now, you can build a better widget. I got all that. That's mechanical engineering. I'm talking about the human, psychological, motivational thought processes. There's nothing new. If you're a capitalist, I'll tell you where it came from. Socialist, I'll tell you where it came from. If you believe in this, I can tell you where it came from. The issue in life is not that you're going to think a new thought about humanity. You're not. The issue in life is you hear both sides and you decide what side of the fence you're going to line up on. For example, the second law of thermodynamics, and you can say this in different ways. Second law of thermodynamics. A Marine would say that over time stuff breaks down. That just expresses the law. Or you could say it like Alberto Pierto said, that those things that do not suffer mortal death are quickly conducted to their end by time. Now see, you can sell books on the other one because it sounds so nice. But they said the same thing. You said the exact same thing. So you've never had an original thought, and you never will. Neither will I. That's not why you're here. Now, point two, we're all riding a death train. All of us. And it's going to make a stop one day. And some of us a little further down the track than others, as I can see. But you never know. You might go out tonight. Now, religion, because Islam is motivated by religion. They're not motivated by a lack of money. Ali Mutalib's daddy was a multi-millionaire, the guy that tried to blow himself up, the underwear bomber. The 9/11 hijackers, upper middle class, middle class. These people are educated. They do it for religion. So what do they think? What do they want? What is all that stuff? Okay, there are 7 major religions in the world that have left their writings. You've got Hinduism, Buddhism, you've got the Tao, you've got Confucianism, you've got Islam, Christianity, Judaism. Now, why are you what you are? We'll bring it back to you. Why are you what you are? Because you're born into it. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. It's not the largest. Christianity is the largest religion in the world. Well, why is Islam the fastest growing religion in the world? They have a lot of kids. You don't even get a door prize for that. You can figure that one out. Yeah, they're popping out 10 kids, and you are doing about 2.1. And you can do the math. In Belgium, by the year 2050, there'll be more Muslims in Belgium than Europeans. They're just going to outbreed them. And so most Muslims, they don't know what's in the Quran. They don't know what's in the Quran. They don't read it. In Afghanistan, 80% of them can't even read or write. Even if they wanted to read it, they don't know what's in it. They're just born into it, just like we are. And of course, you know, for example, when you were younger, and suppose you just said to yourself one day, well, I've read the Rig Veda, and I want to be a Buddhist now. And you went to Grandma and said, Grandma, I've changed my religion. What would Grandma do to you? Yeah, there's a price to be paid if you swap. Now, our culture does recognize if you marry a hottie, we'll let you swap out. You know, then your kids will go to both churches, whatever it is. But other than that, as the Lord Christ said, He said, don't think I've come to bring peace to a family. I've come to bring a sword. Because I'm very dogmatic. Because God's a conservative. There's just one way. There's one interpretation, not 5, and all roads lead to... No, it doesn't work that way. Okay, so you're born into a religion. You've got 1 in 7 chances to get the right one, just by Vegas odds. There's 7 major religions. Those aren't really good odds, because all religions say that we're the truth, the other ones are liars, and you're going to hell. So you got a 1 in 7 chance. Okay, now, what do religions have in common? Well, they all believe that man is bad and God is good, whatever you want to call God. Nirvana, God, paradise. That's good, man's bad. There's a good place when you die and a bad place when you die. They all have the same moral code. I laugh when people say, well, we're going to have a Christian morality. It's the same as Jewish morality. Same as Islam morality. Same as the Buddhists, the middle path, the pillars of Islam. Confucianism, the good citizen. Don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, don't commit adultery, be a nice citizen. The morality is all the same. C.S. Lewis wrote about this in his book, Mere Christianity. It's all the same. The moral code is basically the same. Okay, and so you have the moral code. What's the goal of all religions? When you die, you don't want to go to hell, you want to go to heaven, right? That's the goal. The difference is, how do you do it? And there's only two schools of thought. Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is the most predominant. That is, you follow the moral code all your life, and you do some taboos, eat your sweet tarts, jump up and down 5 times, count beads, pray 7 times, whatever it is. They have taboos and rituals. Do the morality, do the rituals, and when you die, you'll be judged by God. He'll judge you. And in fact, Muhammad was asked, are you going to paradise? You know what he said? I don't know. I'll be judged by Allah. Allah was the moon god. And Muhammad said, he's not the moon god, he's the only God. And he said, no, that's not God. He will judge me, good deeds, bad deeds. If I'm good enough, I go to heaven. If not, I go to hell. So even Muhammad didn't know where he was going. Okay, so that's works. And the thing about works is, they never tell you, and you can't say, well, I'm 75 now, can I rest? Can I just relax a little bit? Do I have to keep looking over my shoulder, wondering if I'm good enough? It's a very harsh system because they never tell you you're in, ever. And they always want to get your money too, of course. There's always a money thing to it. Now, the other concept, you've heard the word before, I know, because we're in a culture that understands. You've heard the word grace. Grace. What is grace? Well, it's like you and I are going to go down here to Houston, and we're going to go down to Corpus Christi, I guess. We're going to swim to Paris. You can't make it. The distance is too great. If God is perfect, He cannot let you in unless you are perfect. Oh, wow. You can have every good deed that every human ever did credited to your account. You still can't get in. Because perfection plus imperfection equals imperfection. Perfection cannot let you in. That's why Adam and Eve, well, people, why show hearts? Give another chance. One prohibition, out you go. That's it. So the math problem is pretty heavy. If we can't do it by works, how are we going to do it? And of course the grace system is God the Father in eternity past, I got a plan. Somebody's got to pay for the price of sin because I'm absolute justice and absolute righteousness. I cannot just ignore it. Somebody's got to do it. And therefore the God-man, Christ in His humanity, bore your sins, my sins, every sin that every human ever did, past, present, future, in 30 A.D. And He screamed out the last 3 hours on the cross, He said, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which in the Aramaic means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which is Psalm 22, written 1,000 years before. The answer is in Psalm 22:3, because you are holy. That's why. He can have nothing to do with sin but condemn it. So he screamed and screamed and screamed for 3 hours. People say, why is he starting to scream all of a sudden? The first 3 hours he's never screamed out in pain. And then after about 3 o'clock he stopped screaming. And I do read the original languages. Yes, you're wondering, why does he know that? I read Greek. Koine Greek. He stopped screaming, he said, telestai, which means, the vocabulary form is teleo, which means it's finished. Mission accomplished. It's finished in the past with the result that it stands finished forever. That's the minus out of salvation. Now if you hear that, it's called the good news. You say, I'll take it, you're in, you can never get out. Bam. That's why it's not called almost the good news. You don't have to be good. Now there's another collateral doctrine that says, who I love, I will skin you alive with a whip. You can get divine discipline, but you cannot get unsaved. You're in the family, and you're in. So that's grace 101. I don't know if your church tells you that or not. Probably not. Because most of them just sing songs and clap their hands and I love Jesus. Well, I always say, you love Jesus? Well, I love Jesus. Tell me about the doctrine of the hypostatic union, unlimited atonement, soteriology, redemption, reconciliation, the theophanies. What are the 7 baptisms in the Bible, and 4 of them are dry and 3 are wet? What's the difference? What's baptismo mean? Don't know. But I sure love Jesus. Oh, okay, I got you. You can't love what you don't know. You can say the words. But that's the good news. So anyway, here's what radical Islam does. Why am I telling you all this? Because we got to understand the differences. And oh, by the way, you got a free Bible class. Here's what radical Islam says. If you kill the infidel, you cut their head off or blow them up or kill them, the first drop of your blood shed in jihad, that's what jihad is, you have to die. You can't almost die. But if you do die in jihad, you automatically, you don't go to Allah's judgment seat like a works religion. Islam is a works religion. You don't go to Allah's judgment seat. You bypass it and go straight to paradise. No, do not stop, straight in. Muhammad Atta had a note in the rental car that said, remember the dark-eyed virgins waiting for you in paradise. And these guys were partying. They were going to pizza parlors, eating pulled pork barbecue. You can't do that. It's part of the taboos. Islam they don't eat pork. They were drinking. They were going to strip clubs. They were doing it all. And they were saying, well, we don't have to do the works thing. We're going to paradise. Because you're not going to survive a plane attack. They were thinking, well, I could get wounded in this. No, they were going to die. And so when you go to paradise, you get 70 supernaturally created virgins. These are supernaturally created. So men, if you like women with big feet, they're going to be ginormous feet, right to your specifications. It's a very misogynistic idea, but I didn't write it, guys. That's what it says. And then you get 2 women you saw here on the earth. 2 women you saw here on the earth. Now, if it's true, they're either going to be Texans, Alabamians, or Mississippians. I haven't seen much else around the world. I'm sorry. And you ever wonder why, when they interview the mothers of these suicide murderers, they always say, oh, Ahmed was a great pillar of the community. I wish I had 10 more just like him. Why don't they say, Ahmed's a nut? No, because he gets 70 relatives get to bypass the judgment seat and go to paradise. And that's what they believe. Now, people will not die for a lie, but they will die for what they believe in. You've got to admire, that's hardcore. So right now, the people, the jihadists in this country are very energized because they see in ISIS, these guys are above the ground. Al-Qaeda's hiding in the ground. They're kind of like, no, we come up, they're going to kill us. ISIS is above the ground, kill us. They're getting 500 people a month going across the border into Turkey and then into Syria. One of them we just arrested in Chicago last week, going to fight for them. So if you've got 500 over there a month and hundreds have left this country, how many more are here right now? Nolan beheaded that woman because he was inspired by ISIS. They're not telling you that. That's exactly why he did it. So we're in a very serious situation because our administration puts their head in the ground. They think we're not distinct. They don't think we're mature enough to distinguish between Islam, the religion, and radical Islam. Now, radical Islam has killed more Muslims than Christians or Jews. That's true. They will kill anybody that doesn't think like they think, and they don't care if you're running the Boston Marathon, wearing spandex and trying to save the whale. They don't care. They will kill you. And that's a serious threat that's coming soon. We're going to have some armed attacks in this country, in the malls. They're just going to get guns and start killing people. So keep your powder dry and be prepared. I think I've exhausted. Do I have any time for Q&A, or are we all done? That's how we lost at Gettysburg. I do have this book. If anybody would like to buy or read more, I'm not hawking books. If you go to Barnes & Noble's, they're 110, I think. I'm selling them for our cost, which is $60. And I'll be over here to autograph them, but they look damn good from 5 feet away. I've really got all the information you will never hear anywhere else. Do we have time for questions, or we do?
These two right here.
We got 2. Yes, ma'am. Ladies first.
Tell us the story about the exchange.
About who?
What was the story behind the exchange?
Bergdahl?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You know, liberals think they can negotiate their ways out of anything. He just talks, magic fairy dust. When Obama took office, he wanted to negotiate with the Taliban so we could leave. And they would just, have a new government with a new government. It would all just be wonderful joy and love. And the Taliban gave him half the peace sign. We're not negotiating with you. So they said, give us everybody in Guantanamo Bay, then we'll negotiate. Well, I can't give you everybody in Gitmo. There's no way politically I can do that. Okay, give us the top 5 guys, and then we'll negotiate. Obama said, well, I can't give you the top 5 guys unless I get something. What have I got? Bergdahl, the traitor. Okay, we'll give you Bergdahl, you give us the top 5 guys, and then we'll come talk to you. So Obama came up with the narrative with Susan Rice, the talking head that cannot tell the truth, and said, oh, he served his country with honor and distinction. I go, what? Anyway, we got Bergdahl, they got the 5 top generals, and now, did the Taliban start talking with us? Oh, heck no. They played us like an old violin. They're not talking because their narrative is going to be this. They step up their violence. We drove the Soviets out, and by Allah, we've driven the Americans out, and thousands more will flock to the banner of radical Islam. They don't want to have a peaceful end. They want to have images of them driving the Americans out. Yes, sir.
So, I've been to the Horn of Africa and Iraq, and I was in Al-Anbar during the awakening.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you. So one of the narratives out there is that radical Islam is like 1% of the population. And this is a very kind of leftist narrative that's being put out there, that he's moral relativism. It's my opinion that it's significantly more than 1%, but beyond that, it's a huge portion of the population that maybe isn't quite ready to strap on a suicide vest, but they're extremely sympathetic to those who are out there doing it.
Yes.
What portion of the public would you say, in that region, and I know it differs from country to country, but where would you say that radical portion is, what amount that is, and how do we push back against that narrative?
Well, there's about 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. So if it's 1%, which is, I think is closer, most figures about 5% to 10%, that's a lot of people. And again, you have a lot of folks that believe in the jihad, but they're going to do it tomorrow. They're not quite ready to kill right now, unless they're inspired. And the ISIS folks have inspired a lot of people. They see victory, they smell victory. And therefore they're flocking to the banners all over the world. But if you're a strict if you read the Quran, you'll see two patterns. One is peace, love, brotherhood, let's get along with everybody verses. And then the other verses are chop their heads off, kill them, do not make friends with the infidel, etc., etc. The first part of the verses were quoted from Muhammad, who was illiterate, when he had no following. He was very weak, so he had the nice flowery verses. When he got his little army together, then the verses started to turn to kill them and spread with fire and sword. So there's the doctrine called abrogation, which means the later verses overrule the former verses. So if you're really a strict constructionist, you read the Quran, you go out and kill people, basically is my belief. But most Muslims are not strict constructionists. They didn't read it. They're just born into it. But they will go to the highest bidder, as you know. If they see a strong warlord, they're there. The Americans there can pay me, we're there. And so they will shift to whatever is strong. They have a very fatalistic outlook towards things. But I don't know the exact figures, but I do know that almost every Middle Eastern country is, in one form or another, if they adhere to Islam and Sharia, Sharia is incompatible with basic concepts of human rights according to the European Court of Human Rights. They're mutually exclusive. You can't believe in Sharia and believe in freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion. They're antagonistic towards each other. I think, as she said too, we've got to follow orders. Thank you very, very much.